In our special edition of Vaticano this week, we speak with Catholics working in Rome and throughout the world to protect human life. We hear from the most recent popes, each speaking strongly and clearly on the dignity of life. Also, we visit the Pontifical Academy for Life, marking its 20th anniversary in 2014. Men and women of the Academy tell us about what it's like to work in their part of the world. All this plus a word with those who take to the streets in defense of life, coming up on this special edition of Vaticano.
Ogni bambino non nato, ma condannato ingiustamente ad essere abortito.
Every child not born but condemned unjustly to be aborted has the face of Jesus Christ, has the face of the Lord, who before being born and then just born experienced the rejection of the world.
Il rifiuto del mondo. E ogni anziano,
And every aged person, even if infirm or at the end of his days, carries within himself the face of Christ. They cannot be discarded, as the throwaway culture proposes that we do. They cannot be discarded.
non si possono scartare.
The beginning of life and the end of life, its protection in every phase in between. St. John Paul II spoke of a civilization of love against culture of death. Pope Francis often speaks of combating a throwaway culture and the globalization of indifference. On the Italian island of Lampedusa, a gateway for undocumented immigrants to Europe, he called for more urgent attention to be given to those who are forgotten, for all whose dignity is neglected.
Tanti di noi, me includo anche io.
How many of us, myself included, have lost our bearings? We are no longer attentive to the world in which we live. We don't care. We don't protect what God created for everyone. And we end up unable even to care for one another. And when humanity as a whole loses its bearings, it results in tragedies like the one we have witnessed. Where is your brother? His blood cries out to me, says the Lord. This is not a question directed to others. It is a question directed to me, to you, to each of us. These brothers and sisters of ours were trying to escape difficult situations, to find some serenity and peace. They were looking for a better place for themselves and for their families. But instead, they found death. How often do such people fail to find understanding, fail to find acceptance, fail to find solidarity, and their cry rises up to God.
And it was here in the Vatican, during last January's so-called State of the World address, that he emphasized why the world should be interested in upholding the dignity and value of every human life. He told diplomatic representatives from more than 170 nations that world stability itself is at stake.
La pace è inoltre ferita da qualunque negazione della dignità umana.
Peace is also threatened by every denial of human dignity. Firstly, the lack of access to adequate nutrition. We cannot be indifferent to those suffering from hunger, especially children.
Lasciarci indifferenti I volti di quanto soffrono la fame.
When we think of how much food is wasted every day in many parts of the world, immersed in what I've often termed the throwaway culture, unfortunately, what is thrown away is not only food and dispensable objects, but often human beings themselves, who are discarded as unnecessary. For example, it is frightful even to think that there are children, victims of abortion, who will never see the light of day. Children being used as soldiers, abused and killed in armed conflicts, and children being bought and sold in that terrible form of modern slavery, which is human trafficking, which is a crime against humanity.
Through his words and his actions, Pope Francis continues in his own way to advance the work of his predecessors to protect human life in every stage of development.
Damned is he who touches man. His life is sacred from the maternal womb. He is born for truth. He is born for love. He is born equipped with this dangerous yet divine prerogative, liberty, teachable but inviolable.
Recent popes haven't held back when speaking of the need to protect life. It was St. John Paul II's will to protect all men and women, from conception to natural death, that led him to found the Pontifical Academy for Life 20 years ago this year.
The Pontifical Academy for Life was started because Jérôme Julien, that was a personal friend of John Paul II, proposed to the Holy Father to start an academy that was devoted specifically to study from different points of view, from a multidisciplinary context, the different problems that have to do with life. Jérôme Julien was a French specialist in genetics that identified the genetic cause of the Down syndrome. Jérôme Julien was always very clear defending life from the moment of conception.
We know that to cure the disabled, and if we cannot cure them, to take care of them, it costs a lot of money, of dedication, of suffering of the parent, of the disturbance for the society. It's very true. But we know that price, very precisely, the amount. It is the exact price we have to pay to remain humane.
You might say that the Pontifical Academy for Life is the Pope's think tank for bioethics, bringing people from all over the world, from all walks of life, really, because we bring students in to study bioethics with study grants. We also have experts who are our members.
And throughout the 2-decade existence of the Academy, the popes have been upholding its reason for being in their teaching.
This
limitless and almost incomprehensible love of God for man reveals up to what point the human person is worthy of being loved on his own, independent of any other consideration: intelligence, beauty, health, youth, integrity, and so on. Definitively, human life is always a good, and it is a manifestation of God in the world, a sign of His presence, a trace of His glory.
The Pontifical Academy for Life is based in Rome, but its collaborators work throughout the world. We caught up with several members representing 4 continents for the view from where they are.
We created a small center called St. Joseph Institute for the Family, dealing mainly for preparation to marriage, family counseling, and the bioethic issue. We started with natural family planning, then later on the importance to form and inform not only those married, but starting with teenagers also to some extent. We have experience in some of the Christian schools that we have, where we have a minority of Christians, to go and to focus on the precious of life as a golden rule, not to say not to do, but what to do. Whatever you want to do, if it is based loving the other, even the unborn baby. You know, we are a minority as a Catholic, 250,000 over almost 85 million. But such initiative has really an impact. It is not a great work, but it has, because we have branches all over Egypt, we put it as a point of spirituality that even non-Christian can hear it. How to love, mutual love, to love the other, the meaning of suffering in a family, which is important today. Jesus, we can say for them, God in the middle of the family, He is our leader. So this issue you can offer them as a spirituality of a family. So even for not only the non-Catholics as Muslim, but also we have some differences in the bioethics field with other churches, mainly with the Coptic Orthodox Church. They are around 10-15% in Egypt. So according to their laws, many things is accepted or permitted. But if you dig in depth and you offer such knowledge, such Catholic doctrine, they accepted it voluntarily. When you explain to them the preciousness of life, and this life is really God Himself that you are dealing with, you don't tell them to do or not to do. You prepare them and to make themselves fear the answer from inside. We cannot judge them if they didn't know.
There are a lot of challenges in bioethics right now. I don't think that there is not a single day that we open a newspaper and we turn on the television or the radio and we don't listen to some bioethic news. And that comes from in vitro fertilization to embryo research, stem cell therapy, either with adult or with embryonic stem cells, cloning, euthanasia, the human genome sequence and their implications in diagnosis and prognosis of different diseases, the genetically modified organisms. It is true that Spain has changed its regulation with the last government, especially the regulation in abortion and the regulation in research with embryos. We have now in Spain one of the most permissive laws regarding embryo research and regarding abortion. This law has not changed so far, even if the government has changed. There are some announcements that the abortion regulation is going to change, but so far we didn't face these changes. So nowadays we still are in the position of having a very open regulation that permits embryo research in almost every single circumstances. Science is now very clear in the matter of the embryo research, and we know that there is not a therapeutical use for embryos, and however there is a therapeutical use for stem cells that comes from adults, and it's not necessary to kill anybody to use those cells. So we hope that things may change.
Well, the most pressing issues, I'm often asked that question, and I say it's not individual specific issues such as abortion or embryonic stem cell research or euthanasia or physician-assisted suicide. It seems to me the most pressing broad issue is the dehumanization, the depersonalization of the human person. So increasingly the weak and vulnerable are being treated as sources of assistance for those who are weak and who are powerful. For example, there's a broad network now of trafficking in live human organs. Okay? So a wealthy man in New York needs a kidney. He can contact a broker in Tel Aviv who contacts his supplier in Manila, who goes into an absolute devastated slum and offers some $1,200 for a young man's kidney with no follow-up medical care. The kidney's flown to South Africa. The man from New York flies to South Africa. He gets his new kidney. He spent $25,000, $30,000 for this. And meanwhile, it's the rich and the powerful really taking advantage of the weak and vulnerable for their own benefit. We see it in the whole issue of embryonic stem cell research. There are probably, in the United States alone, 750,000 frozen human embryos in liquid nitrogen. And there are people who want to thaw those embryos, disaggregate them, and then use their cells for research. Okay? So we just see this over and over again where the powerful, the wealthy, are ready and willing to utilize the weak and the vulnerable for their own benefit. And human beings are no longer looked upon as persons, but rather, as I say, as sources of raw material to help those who are the rich and the powerful.
Lo que tenemos que suscitar nosotros en nuestra propia experiencia.
What we need is to awaken our own stupor before life. Every human being has to provoke astonishment because we believers see in every human being a providential act of God.
De Dios.
Every year, the Pope's bioethics think tank brings the best and brightest together in Rome for a meeting. This year's Pontifical Academy for Life General Assembly focused on aging and disability. Pope Francis wrote them a message that guided their meetings.
The gravest deprivation experienced by the aged is not the weakening of one's physical body, nor the disability that may result from this. Rather, it's the abandonment, exclusion, and deprivation of love. A society is truly open to life when it recognizes that life is precious even in the elderly population, in the disabled, and even in those who are gravely ill or in the process of dying. When society affirms that the call to the realization of one's humanity does not exclude suffering, and instead teaches how to see sick and suffering persons as gifts for the entire community, whose presence calls everyone to solidarity and responsibility, only then may this society call itself open to life. This is the gospel of life, that by your scientific and professional endeavors, and sustained by grace, you are called to spread.
The role or the importance of the Catholic Church is at the different levels, because we have a cultural level to improve and to encourage the respect of the dignity of every human being at all phases of the life. And so also when you become disabled, when life is not so efficient or beautiful or important as some standards of the society, when the society has the risk, as the Pope Francis repeated, the culture of waste. And so to discriminate or to marginate these elderly, these old people, because they are disabled, and there is the idea that they are a problem, only a problem for the society, because the cost, the problem of social care, so the first message is a culture of respect and dignity of elderly people in that situation.
One of the issues that they see going forward is, would one use this to sequence the genome, say, of an embryo or a fetus as it's gestating in the mother? Because you can do that. You can just take the blood from the mother. In that blood will be circulating fetal cells, and those cells can then be sequenced. What then do the parents do with all that information, especially in an era when so many people are considered to be not worthy of having their lives continued, and therefore face the issue of
While bioethicists, medical doctors, and other scientists work to insert Catholic values in healthcare and related fields, pro-life Catholic groups are increasingly active internationally to combat legislation that permits abortion. For the first time this year, a pro-life summit was held in Rome.
This meeting is very exciting. It's actually the first International Life Forum here in Rome, and it's in connection with the Roman March for Life, which is in its 4th edition. And the idea was to bring international leaders from the pro-life movement from all over the world here to Rome to support the Italians, but also to be here with the church.
I think it's very significant for leaders to be able to get together, because as a leader, sometimes you still need a mentor. You're never, a master of the trade. So it was really great for us to be inspired by people who have much more experience than we do.
It brought in some people who have had some real success saving lives in the field.
A locally organised community initiative encouraging Christians to pray and fast for an end to abortion, and we organise prayer campaigns outside of abortion centres around the world. My role is to help promote this work internationally. There's now been 522 cities in 21 countries that have conducted 40 Days for Life campaigns. We're now in the 8th year of the organisation, so we're here in Rome. It's encouraging to see the collaboration and cooperation of many different leaders from around the world to strategise together and also to collaborate and cooperate together. There are many different organisations working for the pro-life cause in different fields. So to bring the different leaders together is a very important task. And I think to get people communicating together, to collaborate where they can collaborate, to realise common goals and objectives is a very, very important task. 40 Days for Life is specifically encouraging Christians to campaign together to pray for an end to abortion. That is our specific role, but where it is possible to unite and collaborate with other organisations, it's really important and good to do that. We've seen nearly 9,000 lives that were scheduled to be aborted saved from abortion. We've also seen over 100 abortion workers leave their jobs and quit the abortion industry, and we've now seen 50 abortion centres close their doors for good.
But we also look at the wider problem, because often these women feel that they have no choice, that they have to have an abortion because they're already sexually abused or the relationship is on the rocks, they don't really have a job, they don't have much of an education, perhaps they have a drug problem or alcohol problem. It just feels so big, their life is already so dark and filled with so many problems, and it feels that this child is just going to cause more problems. And we try to help them concretely in their difficult situation, so that they find that they have a future for their child. Because we often find that when they've aborted the child, then they still have all of their problems, and they have the sorrow of having killed this child, and it stays with them for a long time and causes more depression. So it's really a very life-filled and love-filled message.
The summit ended with the March for Life, Rome's third annual edition, one that just keeps growing with the years. The mother of all marches for life is in Washington, D.C. It has been an inspiration to the rest of the world, so much so that new marches have been cropping up in other parts of the world. This was Berlin in Germany earlier this year. About 5,000 people showed up. On September 14, Berlin will host its annual march organized by the Bundesverband Lebensrecht, an alliance of currently 14 organizations and pro-life initiatives. This was the city's march in 2013 with over 4,500 participants, titled For a Europe Without Abortion and Euthanasia. And here, Catholic faithful and others of goodwill in Nigeria. It's the Archdiocese of Owari, where last year they hosted their first.
The whole point is to get Africa to rise up and say no more to the proponents of the culture of death. We need life, and we need life right now in Africa, especially as we're going through so many kinds of problems in different spheres. But in terms of life, we just want the world to respect the people of Africa and their cultural heritage, and allow us to uphold our own culture of life and civilization of love for us and the generations of the Africans to come.
And now in Rome, they're in their third year, the fourth ever in all of Italy. The numbers are growing, and those include plenty of people from the rest of the world, people with a plan.
There's several different strategies and methods that I think people are thinking about. I mean, obviously, you would love to have a strategy where you just hit the home run right out of the park initially with something that stops, the abortion. But, also there's incremental strategies that work on fetal pain legislation and sort of, knocking the barrier down incrementally. And I think that that's what a lot of people are focusing on today. There's a lot of criticism levied and a lot of difficulties that, pro-life people in legislative arenas face. But, there's also a lot of good people too. So we got to really keep praying for them, because that's really a frontline area that we're facing right now.
The Pope also participated in his own way, setting the course for the fight for human dignity worldwide. He offered a special greeting to them at the close of his Regina Coeli prayer on Sunday, May 4.
Saluto l'Associazione Meter.
I greet the Meter Association, which for nearly 2 decades has been combating all forms of child abuse. Thank you for your commitment, as well as taking part in the March for Life.
Alla marcia della vita. Che quest'anno ha un carattere, which this year has an international and ecumenical character. Congratulations to Meter and to the participants of the March for Life. Go on and keep working on this. Tanti auguri, avanti, lavorare su questo.